be stored in so shy a place if it ever had paid the excise. As I walked round this stack of casks, my foot struck sharply on the edge of a butt, which must have been near empty, and straightway came from it the same hollow, booming sound, only fainter, which had so frightened us in church that Sunday morning. So it was the casks, and not the coffins, that had been knocking one against another, and I was pleased with myself, remembering how I had reasoned that coffin wood could never give that booming sound. It was plain enough that the whole place had been under water. The floor was still muddy, and the green and sweating walls showed the flood mark within 2 feet of the roof. There was a wisp or two of fine seaweed that had somehow got in, and a small crab was still alive and scuttled across the corner. Yet the coffins were but little disturbed. They lay on their shelves in rows, one above the other, and numbered 23 in all. Most were in lead, and so could never float, but of those in wood some were turned slantways in their niches, and one had floated right away and been left on the floor upside down in a corner when the waters went back. First I fell to wondering as to whose cellar this was, and how so much liquor could have been brought in with secrecy, and how it was I had never seen anything of the contraband men, though it was clear that they had made this flat tomb the entrance to their storehouse, as I had made it my seat. And then I remembered how Ratsey had tried to scare me with talk of Blackbeard, and how Elzevir, who had never been seen at church before, was there the Sunday of the noises, and how he had looked ill at ease whenever the noise came, though he was as bold as a lion, and how I had tripped upon him and Ratsey in the churchyard, and how Master Ratsey lay with his ear to the wall. And putting all these things together, and casting them up, I thought that Elzevir and Ratsey knew as much as any about this hiding-place. These reflections gave me more courage, for I considered that the tales of Blackbeard walking or digging among the graves had been set afloat to keep those that were not wanted from the place, and guessed now that when I saw the light moving in the churchyard that night I went to fetch Dr. Hawkins, it was no corpse candle, but a lantern of smugglers running a cargo. Then, having settled these important matters, I began to turn over in my mind how to get at the treasure, and herein was much cast down, for in this place was neither casket nor diamond, but only coffins and double hollands. So it was that, having no better plan, I set to work to see whether I could learn anything from the coffins themselves, but with little success, for the lead coffins had no names upon them, and on such of the wooden coffins as bore plates I found the writing to be Latin, and so rusted over that I could make nothing of it. Soon I wished I had not come at all, considering that the diamond had vanished into air, and it was a sad thing to be cabined with so many dead men. It moved me, too, to see pieces of banners and funeral shields, and even shreds of wreaths that dear hearts had put there a century ago, now all ruined and rotten, some still clinging water-sodden to the coffins, and some trampled in the sand of the floor. I had spent some time in this bootless search, and was resolved to give up further inquiry and foot it home, when the clock in the tower struck midnight. Surely never was ghostly hour sounded in more ghostly place. Moonfleet peal was known over half the county, and the finest part of it was the clock bell. 'Twas said that in times past, when perhaps the chimes were rung more often than now, the voice of this bell had led safe home boats that were lost in the fog, and this night its clangour, mellow and profound, reached even to the vault. Bim-bom it went, bim-bom, 12 heavy thuds that shook the walls, 12 resonant echoes that followed, and then a purring and vibration of the air, so that the ear could not tell when it ended. I was wrought up perhaps by the strangeness of the hour and place, and my hearing quicker than at other times, but before the tremor of the bell was quite passed away, I knew there was some other sound in the air, and that the awful stillness of the vault was broken. At first I could not tell what this new sound was, nor whence it came, and now it seemed a little noise close by, and now a great noise in the distance, and then it grew nearer and more defined, and in a moment I knew it was the sound of voices talking. They must have been a long way off at first, and for a minute, that seemed as an age, they came no nearer. What a minute was that to me! Even now, so many years after, I can recall the anguish of it, and how I stood with ears pricked up, eyes starting, and a clammy sweat upon my face, waiting for those speakers to come. It was the anguish of the rabbit at the end of his burrow, with the ferret's eyes gleaming in the dark, and gun and lurcher waiting at the mouth of the hole. I was caught in a trap, and knew beside that contraband man had a way of sealing prying eyes and stilling babbling tongues. And I remembered poor Cracky Jones, found dead in the churchyard, and how men said he had met Blackbeard in the night. These were but the thoughts of a second, but the voices were nearer, and I heard a dull thud far up the passage, and knew that a man had jumped down from the churchyard into the hole. So I took a last stare round, agonizing to see if there was any way of escape. But the stone walls and roof were solid enough to crush me, and the stack of casks too closely packed to hide more than a rat. There was a man speaking now from the bottom of the hole to others in the churchyard, and then my eyes were led as by a lodestone to a great wooden coffin that lay by itself on the top shelf, a full 6 feet from the ground. When I saw the coffin I knew that I was respited, for, as I judged, there was space between it and the wall behind, enough to contain my little carcass. And in a second I put out the candle, scrambled up the shelves, half stunned my senses with dashing my head against the roof, and squeezed my body betwixt wall and coffin. There I lay on one side, with a thin and rotten plank between the dead man and me, dazed with the blow to my head, and breathing hard, while the glow of torches as they came down the passage reddened and flickered on the roof above. End of chapter 3. Recording by Simon Evers.